Hello everyone and welcome to the latest This Week in the Field with the Handyman in the Field. I'm Dustin and today we are going to be talking about the previous week. We're on week 3 of having employees in addition to wrapping up some other projects that we've been working on the last couple weeks, in addition to just a bunch of smaller jobs coming up that we need to get just taken care of. As I said before, I'm going to be going on vacation the last week of the month, and because of that, I'm trying to wrap up a bunch of my pending jobs. Right now, there's a huge not backlog, but a queue of jobs that need to get completed in the coming weeks. Some of the jobs that I had recently that I quoted out that I didn't expect to get approved, they have been approved, and we got to get those on the books. So I'm trying to do a bunch of like the one-day projects, the smaller projects that aren't going to take too long, so that we can knock out a bunch of them. Also, there's another reason behind that. It's to make sure that there's money flowing in, because if I only did one big project and I didn't have milestone payments, that would be an issue with a lot of money not coming in to be able to support what I'm doing. This is one of the main reasons why I'm not a huge fan of giant projects, because the giant projects don't keep you moving. If you're funding a lot of labor related to these larger projects, it's very difficult to maintain what you need to maintain. I very proudly have never paid a dime of interest on my credit card for the business, specifically because I always make sure that I pay the statement balance off every single month. There is a little bit of floating things here and there when it comes to, I've got materials on order that, could take 2 to 3 weeks to arrive. Those are obviously still charged, but you got to make sure you got other stuff coming in so that there's money to pay the credit card so that you're not paying interest, because I don't want to pay interest if I don't have to. But obviously the other side of this is with employees, you've got to make sure that they're getting paid and you have the correct tax money put to the side so that you can pay what you owe to the government. So let's jump into the week. Like I said, there's a bunch of different things to cover. So starting on Monday, the day started off with, I was by myself. I went and did a privacy wall assembly. This is an existing customer that I had for a while. They've had me do a couple of various different things over the last couple of years. Every project has always been something related to outside. One of them was something as simple as moving a heavy umbrella. Another one was something as simple as assembling a propane heater for their patio. But last year they had a privacy wall that they bought online, which is 2 metal posts and then some brackets that connect to a nice, decorative panel. And the idea was that they were trying to keep a certain level of privacy from their neighbors. Well, this time around they had another one of the exact same thing. The only difference was it was in a different location. So that said, went there, took care of that. It's pretty straightforward. The only hiccup that I ran into with that was that I had to run back to my shop because I did not have the drill driver, the Milwaukee installation drill driver that I have. It was just not, I don't know if it was the bits that I was using, because I have a tendency to not replace my bits as frequently as I probably should. Mostly because I think about, I should probably replace this bit, and then what ends up happening is I'm not thinking about it, and I don't use the bits for a while, and then the next time I'm using it, I'm like, I should probably replace these bits, and then the cycle just repeats. But that said, basically the gist of what's going on here is that I had I needed to get a different bit, and I wanted to get a more powerful drill because I needed to drill directly into the steel in order to attach these brackets. They don't come pre-drilled, which in my opinion is kind of stupid, but that's how it comes. And I needed to just go back to the shop. So once they got wrapped up, the customer was very happy with it. That job was $315. Immediately after that, came back to the shop, met the 3 employees. We go out to the property that we just did we just did the demo work in the basement, among other things. That job, there was another job there that was a barn door installation. He wanted a barn door installed for his office. So again, existing customer, repeat customer, and he wanted the barn door installed. He originally purchased a barn door. It was not the right size. He bought it at Menards. It wasn't the right size, so he asked me if I could find one that was the correct size. I did. It came from Wayfair. The only downfall about the one from Wayfair is the door is not pre-assembled. You have to assemble the door yourself. That's the only thing that kind of stinks. Again, the only hiccup with this installation was that weirdly, the door jamb, or I should say the door frame, was not level. The trim that was installed in the door itself was all off about 1/8 of an inch from one side to the other. So the track, in order to make sure that the track was installed level and to ensure that the door wasn't going to slide automatically one way or the other, we needed to make sure that track was level. So there was a little bit of a modification making sure that that track was level, which looks off when you look at the frame, but there's not much you can do about that except for, reshape the frame or something like that, and that wasn't what he wanted. So that got done pretty quickly. That was $825. The original estimate was, I think, $575 for the installation, but we had to add on to the door that we sourced from Wayfair. So that was pretty much Monday. Nothing else that really happened that day. Tuesday, I went back to the drywall job that I've been at the last 2 weeks. Wanted to wrap that up. So I had to remove the toilet from there. We did a third and a fourth coat of mud on the walls to try to get everything to be as smooth as possible. Is it perfect? No, it's not. Part of the reason it's not perfect is because there was just so many repairs of the stairs of the drywall that was put in that it just wasn't exactly perfect. Although I will say it looked pretty good sight unseen. Now, most of this is behind a toilet. They didn't have me come and do the painting. They said that they were going to have a painter come. So the painter could always do a light sand and it would probably be fine. And then maybe potentially do a slight small coat, but the painter, I'm assuming, would probably quote that based off of what he sees. The pictures that I'm going to show here, you really can't even tell because the problem is that, one, they're not completely dry. The third coat was completely dry when I applied the fourth coat, but I took these pictures as I was cleaning up and heading out, which was probably midway point. So it looks blotchy because part of it's wet, part of it's dry. So there's that. But the customer was, again, happy, no issues. And I did say that if I needed to come back out, I would certainly come back out to, do any modifications that were necessary. Part of what I've always noticed is that by the time you put some primer on if you put primer and you have a quality paint, that's also going to camouflage a lot of that stuff as long as it's, the edges are feathered. So that got done. That was $950. After that, I had another job that I was potentially going to try to fit in that day. However, I couldn't get a hold of the person and it just didn't work out. So I spent most of the rest of the day actually just doing some light admin work, which then leads me to this next thing. So this is not related to a specific job, but I'm going to bring it up here because it was important. The bookkeeping software that I had through the bookkeeping add-on that I had through my CRM, I ended up canceling it on Tuesday, specifically because I didn't want to get billed for the first full month that I had, or that I would owe, that was due on Wednesday. And part of the reason behind this is that I started to realize that out of all of these months that I've been paying, starting in March and going through the middle of June, I have yet to have any scenario where I've had anybody doing any work other than just what you would typically see on a QuickBooks auto categorizing. There was very few things that I had anybody say, this is what this is, this is what you need to look at. Can you check this? Can you check that? I'm not saying that the service couldn't be beneficial for some people, but for me, because I'm very particular about how my numbers are and what I see with my numbers, I want everything to be exact. I also do not want to wait till the end of the month to find out whether or not I'm doing well or I need to do more. I typically know how well I'm doing just based off how much money's coming in, because I know how much money has to go out. But I don't want to be in a scenario where I have to be doing this all myself when the whole point was to pay someone to do it for me. The cost of it for at least my tier of revenue was supposed to be $299 a month. The whole idea behind that was that you had a dedicated bookkeeper. My understanding was that the bookkeeper was supposed to, actually like categorize things, figure out the best way to put everything where it needs to go, so that way you weren't having to do that. The problem is that as I look at things like that, I realize that, I put a transaction from Home Depot. They don't know if it's a job-related expense, if it's a tool, if it's a piece of equipment. They don't know if it's related to, what I call field supplies, which are just consumables that I use, paper towels, rags, paintbrushes, things like that, that aren't necessarily dedicated to a specific job. So I don't know that the way I track things, it would have worked for having someone else do the bookkeeping without them knowing exactly what each and every transaction is, which they don't. They only know the totals and where the transactions are coming from. So at the same time, I said this before, but not this past week, but the week before, my business coaching session had a bookkeeper on, and he was showing a way that he runs books for a handyman company. And I was like, that's exactly what I want. And it's easy to maintain yourself. You don't have to have somebody do it. He did it for somebody because that's what he was paid to do. But it was he was keeping track of job costing. He was keeping track of what jobs he was actually bringing the most money in, things like that. So that's the kind of stuff that I want to be able to track that I'm not currently tracking. I know how much each individual job is, but I really need to get, instead of an individual job, categorize it as more of a general category of what type of job. I do a lot of punch lists. I do a lot of property turnovers. I do a lot of other miscellaneous work, but every single one of these could be categorized in a specific category. And if I chose the categories ahead of time, it would be very easy to sit there and say, this is what those categories are. This is what's bringing in the most money. This is what I need to focus on in the future. So got in touch with him. Not looks like, but I'm switching over to QuickBooks, which one is significantly less expensive than the software program that I was going to be using. And then if I need to, the bookkeeper is available at an hourly rate to help me get set up initially. So for right now, I'm trying to get in a scenario where I have everything caught up that I need to get caught up on, which is like estimates, returning calls, everything like that. So that way I can have the extra time when I do, because there is a couple of times this coming week where I should have a little bit of extra time. And if I do have extra time, then I should be able to, sit down and actually work on some of the stuff that I need to with QuickBooks. In addition to that, the week that I'm on vacation, I know I'm going to have some downtime. And if I have some downtime, that's the week that I'll really be dialing in this QuickBooks thing to get it all set up, so that way I can start getting it. And then I can also start going back and reconciling all of my stuff for the year. In an ideal world, I would love to be able to go back and pull all the transactions from 2024 through now. That's not going to happen. So I need to start focusing on getting at least 2026 done, and then potentially going back if I have the time to do 2025. And the only reason behind that is that in the off chance that I try to expand at a faster rate than the money that actually is coming in, I have to go get a business loan. The only way I'm going to be able to get a loan is if I can show that the business is profitable. I can show that the business is, generally profitable using my tax returns, because I have been profitable every single year. But if I wanted to really get in the nitty gritty, I need to show how I'm profitable, how much I'm profitable, not just here's my tax returns, this is how much money I had to pay on my, the amount of money that came in. So I think this is a good step forward. I need to really get on the same page as everybody else, because it's very difficult to sit there and say, hey, these Google Sheets that I use is what how I manage everything. If I can get it all synced up and understand and comprehend how all of the QuickBooks works, hypothetically speaking, it should reduce the amount of work that I have to do with these Google Sheets that I have. So that was one of the things that happened on Tuesday as well. Jumping over to Wednesday, I had my LATIP meeting in the morning. There was a couple of different things that happened in that specific meeting. One of them was me trying to figure out the best way to communicate to the people in the room that while you may contact me about work, I cannot just drop everything because I do have a very busy schedule. I have not come across the best way to communicate that. In addition to that, there's been a couple of other small issues that have come up, which is I've had a couple of members who are not, they are more professional services than they are contractor services. They have asked me to give them quotes for things. I have gone out of my way to go to wherever they are in order to get them an estimate, which I typically do not do for a normal customer. They don't necessarily know that, so that's understandable, but they asked me to come out, take a look at something. I give them a price. It's a price that is what I need to charge. It's not necessarily, Joe Handyman chucking a truck situation. It's obviously not that. But the problem is that I think that because my badge and my industry is labeled as handyman, the concern that I keep having is that is the misconception that some of the members have is like, oh, well, he could just take care of anything or he'll do anything for $1. That's not true. There are lots of things that I don't want to do. There's lots of things that I've filtered out of my services because it's not stuff that I want to do. There's a lot of things that aren't worth my time. It's not even that it's not worth my time. It's that it's not worth their money. People don't want to necessarily pay for certain things. I've had some of my existing customers in probably the last year ask me for different things related to painting, and I've told them prices and they say, wow, that's a lot of money. And it's because they're thinking about how long it's going to potentially take and saying, well, this is only going to take a day. How are you charging $1,200 for it? Well, by the time you eat up materials and paint, I'm down to, let's just say for a shed. This was a customer a while back that I had. She had a shed. She wanted the entire shed painted. 2 different colors, not one color, so 2 different colors. You've got to sit there and actually cut in around all of the trim. And so you got 2 different colors, 3 cans of paint. I'm not buying cheap paint because cheap paint just takes longer and it's harder to work with. And then in addition to that, yeah, I probably might have been able to get it done in one day, or if I had somebody with me, I might be able to get it in one day. But the thing is, I still am having to charge a certain amount of money for that. And she immediately was like, I just don't think I just can't pay that much money for it, which is understandable. I didn't hold it against her in any way. It's just, that's why there are certain things that I can't do. I learned a long time ago to eliminate landscaping because I had a customer, the same exact thing, get very upset about the fact that I was charging as much as I was charging for landscaping. And this was back when I was like $60 an hour. That was just too much. According to her. So the thing is, you have to pick your battles, I guess is the best way to put it, but it's really just picking and choosing and figuring out the best things that are best profitable for you, but also allows you to stay in business. Because ultimately, if I charge very little amount of money every single time someone says they can't afford whatever I'm charging, the issue becomes, well, then I'm going to eventually go out of business because between my insurance, workman's comp, the software programs that I use, there's a decent amount of overhead. I've got over $2,000 of overhead, and I don't even have anything related to a vehicle. My vehicle mileage comes off at the end of the year. I don't pay for gas through the business. I pay that personally. And if I was to switch over to a van, have a payment that I owe on the van, have the gas associated with it, all of that would be, again, extra extra overhead that I would have to deal with. So again, it's just a matter of trying to figure out the best way to get things done. But this all goes back to the LATIP meeting. So I try to communicate, listen, right now it's kind of difficult because I do have, I'm booking larger projects out almost a month. At this point, I also am booked for at least the next couple of weeks with smaller projects because, one, I have last week and this week pretty already full. The following week, I'm out of town. And the week after that is almost completely full that week too. there's just a lot. And there's always more that comes up because of the property manager will contact me about something. Other people will contact me about small things that I try to fit in. But like, I need people to understand, hey, don't expect whatever you want me to do to be able to be done in a week. That said, I leave the meeting, and of course I get a text message from one of the members who's like, hey, here's a list of stuff. Now, this member has been telling me for probably 2 months they have some things at their house that need to get taken care of. I explained to them, send me a list of the things, and finally they've gotten around to sending me the list. However, they send me the list the week that I say I'm pretty booked out. So their question was, how quickly can you get out here to take care of this stuff? We're talking about the beginning of July at the very earliest, probably the second week of July, to be honest, or to be more, accurate, because that's just how it is. Also, doesn't ever ask how expensive it is either to do any of these things. Now, I will make a quote and send a quote because I do not want to be in a scenario where they don't want to pay as much as it is, or to get blindsided, because it seems like the vast majority of people do not have any comprehension on how much some of this stuff costs. The other thing that happened was another person who was in the chapter who had me look at something replacing a kitchen island. All they wanted was the old cabinets pulled out, new cabinets put in and set up and in place so that they could get they had a countertop that they had already pre-bought that needed to be installed in this new space. I gave them, she contacted me. I went out there. As I went out there, I had I had 3 different options that I presented her within like 48 hours, less than 48 hours. And that was just because I was trying to make sure, again, that I'm accommodating to the members because I am new. I have to be careful about that because I'm starting to get this reputation of I can take care of anything as soon as possible. But then the issue is that that's not, the pricing that's associated with some of that is not exactly the same thing. So not the best scenario because I gave her the 3 options, and that was a week ago. This week, she didn't say anything to me when I was in the actual meeting. I had to leave early, and when I left, she ended up sending me an email saying that they've decided that they're just going to try to do the work themselves using the information that I gave them. So I basically laid out 3 different plans that they could choose from, and they're going to go the route of doing it themselves. All of my quotes were between, I think, like $850 and $1,250, with the $1,250 option being the one that I suggested being the best option. The option they decided, it seems like based off their email that they're going with is the $1,250 option, but they're going to buy the materials themselves, which was separate from the $1,250 anyway, because they're trying to save money. Again, I completely understand. Again, if you don't know how much stuff is, that becomes the problem. So this is becoming a constant issue. I responded back to her and said, listen, if there's any advice you could give me on, trying to communicate best to the group that I am not cheap, because I'm not. I don't want people to assume that what I am saying or what the prices that I'm giving are, way vastly expensive. I'm priced moderately, like right in the middle of, what you would find if you were to, do research on your own. Most people aren't doing research on their own. So I haven't gotten a response back from her yet, so we'll see what happens, but hopefully it gets addressed at some point because it's becoming a concern that I have amongst probably half the members in the room. Meanwhile, some of the other tradespeople, they have, businesses and they're obviously charging exactly what they need and there's no issues with that. All right, so after that, we went to a punch list. This is a referral from a customer, so he's a new customer. I went to an estimate a couple weeks back for him, but he had a storm window for a, it's weird because I've never seen this before. He has an exterior door with side views, but there was side view storm windows installed on the outside along with the storm door. So one of them had shattered. He thought it was from some hail that was in the area. So I had to get the glass replaced on that. I had a local glass company do that for me. And then he had a door adjustment because the door wasn't closing properly, that same door. And then there was a exterior light that needed to be replaced. So that was $456. He had a veteran discount, which is 10% off, which otherwise would have been, that would have been like now I don't even, oh, it's because the discount was off just the labor. It's not off materials. So anyway, that said, he had some additional items that he wanted me to take a look at that we're going to probably be doing in the future when we go to, when we're back in the area, because there are smaller jobs. He has an issue with some mice. So he wants basically the perimeter of the building inspected, and then anything sealed off that needs to get sealed off. He also has a dimmer switch that needs to be replaced as well. So 2 minor things, very small, but it does take some time. And I didn't have the time. Well, one, it was raining that day too, so there wasn't any time. That day also, there was a very heavy rain. The second job that we were supposed to have, that my employees were supposed to meet me at, was a window well clean out, which was basically we had to actually clean out the drain. So you have to go down into the window well and you got to actually scoop out what you need to scoop out, get to the pipe, clear the pipe, vacuum it all out, and then put new rock back down. That was going to get, so it was already going to be difficult because of the rain, but I was prepared to do it in the rain. He had a ceiling fan that he said he wanted replaced inside, which ended up being an exhaust fan, a bathroom exhaust fan. And then he had some vinyl fencing that was blown over during a recent storm where the posts legitimately just bent in place. So the posts have to be removed and everything else has to be put back together. So he was going to order the supplies. So when I showed up, I mean, we're talking downpour, straight downpour. And it downpoured pretty much all day. So I just basically walked through everything with him since I was already in the area and I didn't have anything else on my schedule that day. So that basically was that. I was only there for a short amount of time. I told him I would adjust the quotes to include the other items that we talked about. And then, we would be back to do it in the very near future. After that, so my employees were actually on their way to that job when I told them to turn around and go back to the shop. Then I ended up telling them, we're done for the day. You're more than happy to go home, or you can work in my basement. And it's just basically giving them the ability to work with certain things, like get more use on a drill or a driver, because that's not something that they typically use on job sites. I'm building a storage room in my basement, and this allows us to put it all together a little bit quicker, because I never find the time to actually be able to do this. So that's what the rest of that day was. Jumping over to Thursday, we were at a new customer. This was a punch list. It had a variety of different things. The first thing was in the master bathroom, the 2 drains in the sinks. They had a pair of double sinks. The drains we were replacing with pop-up drains. They had the old style ones where you pull the sticks. One of the drains, I'm assuming the wife's sink, was a slow drain. So the thought process was, if we get it all cleared out, the pop-up drains will just be better for them so they don't have drain issues in the future. So we replaced both of those drains. Then we went to the boys' bedroom and replaced a ceiling fan that was on a 3-foot down rod. Took care of that. Then we jumped over to the sliding patio door on the back of the house, replaced the handle on that. I guess I should have started off by saying, so I went to the job site by myself originally. I spent about an hour figuring out all the materials I was going to need to complete all of these things, because we were getting all of the materials. And figuring out the shopping list, then I went to Home Depot, and then by the time I got back from Home Depot, my 3 employees, they met up at the house, unloaded, and I just basically had them follow me room to room, not follow me, but like work one room ahead of me on the path that we were going to go. So if I was done with the drains, they're cleaning everything up, they're getting everything taken out of that room, so that way that's set. while I'm working on the drains, they're setting up the next one, which was the ceiling fan. So that way that's set up. Then when I move from the ceiling fan, when we go to the patio door, they're getting the next one set up. So the whole idea was to just make sure that everything kept moving smoothly and fast. So the patio door was pretty straightforward, just replacing the handle on there, getting it set, making sure we make the necessary adjustments so that it locks properly. After that, we had 2 lights inside the garage that they wanted brighter lights. One of them didn't even have a light. So they wanted 2 lights installed so that they were brighter, so they'd have more light in the garage. So we got that taken care of. After the garage lights, then we went and they had two doors that opened up to a coat closet. They had dummy doorknobs on them, and they had the little ball latches at the top. The ball latches, actually, the one was damaged completely, and the other one had an issue where the ball latch was actually making the door split because it was too tight. So they wanted the ball latches taken out, and they wanted something that was magnetic, and they wanted real doorknobs installed. So we drilled out 2 spots for doorknobs, installed the 2 doorknobs, put on magnetic latches, and then we wrapped up. The family, props to the parents because they got 5 kids in that house. I've got 3, and 3 is sometimes too much for me. But they got 5 kids, and the mom was there, and the kids were super well behaved, super nice. They wanted to, they paint us pictures, and they painted us different pictures of different things. So as we got done with that job was 9:30. Then we jump over to Friday. Friday we had a property turnover for the property manager. This one was way up north on the north side of Chicago, Logan Square, for those of you who are familiar with Chicago. It's a nice apartment. The rent is like $2,400 a month, which is insane. It's a 1-bedroom apartment with a very small, it's not small, but it's bigger than a studio apartment, obviously, because it's a 1-bedroom, but the kitchen is really, it's like a galley kitchen, and it's pretty small. So that said, we had a couple of different things that needed to be focused on. There was a couple of walls that needed to be patched and painted. There was some areas around the windows that needed to be patched and painted. There was a wall in the bedroom that needed to be patched and painted, and we had to try to do a color match because we weren't intending on painting the entire unit. The kitchen needed to be cleaned up. Almost all the walls were painted in the kitchen just because of grease spots. There were some touch-ups on the ceiling. We had to diagnose an issue with the garbage disposal. It wasn't working properly. Turns out somebody's bright idea was to disconnect the garbage disposal because the disposal itself was broke. So we had to replace the disposal and fix the switch. We also needed to regrout the bathroom the tile in the shower. The intention was only to do the initial grout lines that were having issues, but the problem was that I couldn't get the grout to match perfectly with what was readily available. So we ended up regrouting almost practically everything in there. There was a trim piece that needed to be installed in the bathroom where there was some drywall damage so that it was waterproof. Sealed that off with silicone and a PVC type of trim piece. And then it was just general cleaning from there. There was wiping down, making sure there was no cobwebs. We had to wipe all the windows down, both sides, because the windows were pretty dirty. And then in addition to that, we also installed mini blinds for all of the windows. And that was that job. It was a pretty long day. I don't like going up into the city. I especially don't like having to drive an hour up to the city. But the plus is that we went up there and it was after rush hour, so we didn't get stuck in traffic. And on the way back, we were late enough where we didn't get stuck in traffic or too bad of traffic on the way back either. So overall, it was a pretty straightforward day. Luckily, there was a Home Depot about 15 minutes away to be able to get the paint and the stuff we needed. Everything got taken care of, and it was it was a long day, but it was quick work. There was a lot of things that were really small that needed to get done, but everything got done, and it was a $1,900 day for that job. So that was Friday. Jumping over to Saturday, I wasn't intending on working. This just keeps happening. I did have a return customer, I should say, The punch list, I think I said, was a new customer on Thursday. Friday was obviously the property manager, but it was a new property that we hadn't worked on yet. Saturday, the intention was not to work. I was supposed to have a door, I was supposed to do a quote for a door. I repaired this door last year. It's for a commercial property. We replaced the door closer and it worked fine, but it's been about a year and now the door closer's broke again. So he contacted me and just basically said, can you take a look at this? Maybe we can come up with something else. I said, well, maybe the best option is to install a door stop to keep the door from opening too far, because that seems to be the issue, is that the door is just getting pushed too far and then it's breaking the closer. So I had to go take a look at that to find out if a door stop was even going to be possible given the situation outside. After that, I went to another customer that contacted us this week. She had a variety of projects. She has a shed that needs to be completely repainted. The front side of the shed needs a bunch of the wood replaced. Her front door needs to be scraped and sanded and painted. And then she has trim around her garage door that's rotting in certain places. So we're just going to replace it with PVC trim and then caulk everything. So I had to go take a look at that. Both of those estimates, I should say, were literally within like 5 minutes of each other. And then I had a customer who I had called back who had left a message earlier this week, specifically talking about, she called, I think, on Friday, but it was basically very straightforward. She had a piece of aluminum trim or flashing that got peeled off of her garage fascia boards. The issue was that when I called her and told her how much it was going to be, she was making it seem like she didn't have the money. And of course, I sometimes have a soft heart, I guess, for when it comes to older ladies who don't have a lot of money, and I try to help them out. Of course, before this, I didn't know where she exactly was located, so I didn't have any idea. She was in a town that's about 40 minutes away from me, and it wasn't a quick thing to get to. But I was able to get over there, take care of it. I didn't end up charging her anything because I just wanted to take care of it. And it honestly only took me about 10, 15 minutes to take care of. And I had to use her ladder because I didn't have a ladder big enough, because when she talked to me on the phone, she gave me her address and I looked it up, but all I could see was a ranch style house. So I assumed that the flashing she was talking about was something that was ground level that I could get to with a typical size ladder. Or step ladder that I typically have, which is like 4.5 feet tall. That wasn't the case. So luckily she had a ladder. Otherwise, that would have been a huge problem for me because I wouldn't have been able to actually make the repair. And in addition to not being able to make the repair, I probably would have had to come back because then I would have just felt bad that I wasn't able to do it. So that was done. Technically, that's not under the business because I'm not charging anything and I can't warranty anything if I'm not charging anything. But she did say that she got my information from the local Chamber of Commerce, which that Chamber of Commerce, one, I'm not a part of any Chamber of Commerce. So somebody from my networking group must be a member of that Chamber of Commerce. Otherwise, I'm not sure how she got my number. But the only other things that happened this week outside of that, my business coaching, I had to cut short because the business coach was running late and I had a commitment outside of work that I needed to get to. But that was just more bookkeeping talk, and I had a chance to talk with the bookkeeper a little bit more. And then the other thing was I've been dealing with the receptionist service, trying to get them to do the right thing when it comes to the confines of what I've told them. There's been a number of situations where they're taking the information, getting the towns that they're located in, and the towns are nowhere near where I service. Or they're saying that we can extend our services that we offer for certain people, which is not true. I've never said that we could extend our services. I've always just said, that's not something that's on our list, but we could certainly take down your information and someone can give you a call back. And that's it. If it's outside our service area, we don't even need to give them a call back. That's the whole point of the receptionist, is to field those calls so that we don't have to call them back. So that's the only other thing that's been happening. But basically for the entire week, we were at $5,376, which is, we're doing really well for the month. Obviously, I've got the labor from the employees that's coming out of this that we have to keep in mind. I just ran payroll for 2 weeks and it was like $2,400 or somewhere in that range of what I had to pay out for taxes and everything else. So that's just something to keep in mind, is that, you know, these numbers might be high, which is great, and I'm not complaining about that, but I do have the added costs of the employees, which you just have to factor in. So with all that being said, next week when you guys are listening to this, we'll have a normal week, and then that's the following week is the week that we'll actually be skipping this week in the field, so that way everything stays on track with the time frame that we have. With all of that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate the new subscribers. The last time I checked, we were over 70 subscribers. Thank you for that. I've been getting a couple of new comments. There was a comment recently about film some stuff on the job site. If you listen to some of the earlier episodes, I specifically explained why I don't want to do that. That's why we've got pictures of before and afters, because I'm just here to tell you about the jobs and talk about the money. It's not necessarily how to do the repair and things like that. So hopefully you guys are enjoying it. If you are, please leave comments. If you've got any questions or things you'd like answered, please take the time to leave a comment. I will be sure to answer them, or potentially do a video response if it's a more in-depth question that you ask. Like, subscribe, share with your friends, share with other people in the trades, and let me know if there's anything else that you guys would like to hear about. With all that being said, this has been This Week in the Field with the Handyman in the Field, and I'll see you guys next time.